Excellent.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's live session. My name is Sanjay Saha. I am the CEO of BSkill and your primary instructor. This course is jointly organized by the Association of Industrial Pharmacists of Nigeria, the IAPHL Nigeria chapter, and BSkill. Unfortunately, today, our guest speaker from Nigeria, Dr. Okafor, she could not attend because she has a family emergency, so she's busy there. But it's okay. I will, conduct this session myself. Um, Today we have two things to discuss. First, we will look at strategic procurement in health supply chains. And then, so the first part is a bit theoretical. And then the second part is more practical, where, you will uh, uh, work together in a discussion and, answer the assignment that we have for you. And the same assignment, then you can upload as part of your module 5 assignment, which will help you move forward. Okay. Uh, Before we begin today's session, I wanted to just quickly summarize what we have learned in the previous weeks and the previous modules, which is on forecasting. So if you remember, we discussed how to convert tablets to packs. We discussed how to calculate average monthly consumption. We also learned how to do trend analysis. And based on that, you did an assignment as well in module 4. So if anyone has any questions about that module, about what we learned, this is a time to ask. I can respond to some questions very quickly, and then we will begin this week's session. Okay, so I will take a quick pause. So if you have any questions about forecasting, quantification, please do not hesitate to ask. Okay, it seems that module is very well understood. So that's great. Very happy for all of you. So let's then quickly move towards today's session, where we will understand strategic procurement, and then we will go through a discussion. Now, before I show you what is strategic procurement, I want to ask all of you a question. Who can tell me the difference between these two terms? We sometimes use them interchangeably, but these terms, one is procurement and the other is purchasing. Who can tell me the difference between procurement and purchasing? You can raise your hands, or you can just unmute, and then I will let you speak. Difference between procurement and purchasing. Anyone?
Hello?
Yes, Isaac. I can hear you.
Okay, let me try. I think that purchasing is a subset. Procurement is like a bigger house. We're housing several other components, whereas purchasing is a sub-unit of that procurement process. Simply put,
Okay.
I will just simply say it that way.
Okay, fine. Anyone else who would like to describe a bit more? Yes, Festus.
Hello?
Yes, Festus, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Yeah, by my own understanding, I think in addition to what Isaac has said, um, procurement is procurement involves the planning, the organizing, all the quantification, the budgeting, and everything that is needed to have a product or a service. While purchasing as a subset is just like paying for the product or for the service at that point. So procurement, I mean, involve more other processes than purchasing.
Hmm.
I need to
Okay.
control.
All right, excellent. Now that's very good, Festus and Isaac, and both of you are correct. Purchasing can be simply, for example, say I go to the market, I visit a pharmacy shop, and I ask for a pack of ibuprofen or paracetamol, or even any anti-diabetic medicines. I pay for it. That is purchasing, as simple as possible. When it comes to procurement, we generally use the term procurement when we are buying, first of all, in bulk. If you go to a shop and you're buying a medicine, you would not call it procurement. Procurement is generally the term used when, first of all, you're buying in bulk, and it has, like, Festus, you said, it has a lot of other processes involved in it. It involves you to identify the supplier. It involves you to negotiate the price because you're buying in bulk. It involves you to negotiate trade terms. Maybe your, seller is not in your country. So it involves you to negotiate trade terms. Then it involves you to negotiate the prices for freight, and then, customs. So all that inclusive, because you have to look at all the costs, and that's why we call it procurement. And then procurement does not finish until and unless the products are with you in your warehouse, or wherever that they should go. So procurement starts when you issue, say, uh, an invitation to bid. The process begins, and it ends when the products arrive in your warehouse. So it's a very long process. So all that is part of procurement. So procurement involves bidding, it involves contracting, and then it involves follow up with various stakeholders until the product reaches. And then all these are part of procurement. Your contracting is part of procurement. Customs, managing customs is part of procurement. Managing freight overall, is part of overall procurement process. So that's why procurement is very big, and purchasing is, like you said, Isaac, is a subset of procurement. So in a bigger process, if we have to also define purchasing in the bigger procurement process, purchasing would mean when you issue a purchase order to a supplier. So say you did your bidding and you issued a contract. Say a supplier will sell you anti-cancer medicines for 2 years. Now, every 6 months, if you are issuing them a purchase order, that can qualify as purchasing. Okay. So keep in mind that these two terms are different. So do not use them interchangeably. If someone is using them interchangeably, then that's not correct. Okay. So now, first thing is to understand that there is a difference between the terms purchasing and procurement. Now, the next thing is to understand that procurement in today's world also needs to be strategic. It cannot be just a simple procurement exercise where you set up an invitation to bid. Someone will come and put up their offers. You will select one or two suppliers, and then you will issue them a purchase order. In today's world, it is not as simple as that because of multiple reasons, and especially for all of you who are based out of Nigeria. Now, let me give you a few ideas why. First of all, the local manufacturing capacity in Nigeria is limited, as you all know. Nigeria most likely imports close to 60 to 70%, if not more, uh, of 60 to 70% of products that it consumes in a year from outside of the country. Okay. And majority of those products are complex products. Nigeria now has the capacity to manufacture simpler products, but anything that is a bit more complex, it has to be imported either from India, China, South Africa, USA, Germany, or anywhere else. Okay. So one reason is this, that the reason why it has to be strategic is because you do not manufacture it in your country. Secondly, you are not the only country who's importing. So you have a lot of competition for every product that you import. Now, Nigeria, of course, has an added benefit that whenever you are importing high volumes because you have a larger population. So that is your competitive advantage. But still, you are competing against all the other African countries who are also importing, because almost every African country do not have manufacturing capacity. Thirdly, depending on the volume, depending on trade terms, depending on how the shipping will be, prices vary. So how will you know what is the correct price? And then number four, and as we studied initially in this cohort, that Nigeria is a decentralized mixed system, which is largely decentralized. So in your case, every state is importing separately. So while the federal government is also importing to some extent, donors and partners are also importing on the country's behalf, but various states, they are also importing themselves, and there is no pooled procurement. And not that I know of. There may be some, to some extent, maybe some states are probably coming together, but not to an extent where you can gain competitive advantage. Okay, so because of all these reasons, procurement must also be looked as a strategic activity. Okay, so let's now understand, first of all, what do you mean by strategic procurement? And then we will look at, uh, what are some of the objectives which are written on the screen as well. So strategic procurement is a comprehensive and a long-term process that strives to procure the required product, we discussed, of the appropriate quality and cost. So see, the indicators are coming here. Quality and cost in a timely manner. So time is another indicator to satisfy the demand. It aligns procurement operations within the organization's overall goals while minimizing supply chain risks. That is another indicator, and increasing supply chain efficiency. And that's the final indicator. So we have these 4 or 5 indicators or objectives that are addressed through a strategic procurement process. So when we say strategic procurement, you have to think longer term. You cannot just think like this, that okay, I need this product, I will just buy it from this manufacturer who's probably in India. No, that is not strategic procurement. That is just ad hoc purchasing. Strategic procurement is you take a horizon of 3 to 5 years. You determine, estimate, it may not be the exactly correct estimate, you estimate how much of a volume of products that you would need. Then you try to identify what kind of suppliers that are there globally that can address that need. And then not only you do competitive bidding, but you also try to create long term relationships with all these suppliers who are going to supply you for those 3 to 5 years. And hence, what you want to achieve out of strategic procurement is the best possible price for the products, best possible quality for the products, uh, reduce lead times. Okay, so how quickly can the products arrive in your country once you raise a purchase order? And also reducing your risks. So for example, risk in this case is you only have one supplier. What if that supplier goes bankrupt? What if that supplier could not find access to APIs? What happens then? Or what if that supplier does not deliver you on time or gives you poor quality product? What then? So all those things, risks, cost, quality, time, all those things you need to understand what are the implications. Um, okay, is everyone able to hear me? Chidima, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, all right. So someone said that video suddenly stopped. I just wanted to, okay, I can hear. Okay, excellent. So that's why procurement in today's world, in today's globalized world, it has to be much more strategic. So as I said, the objective is to increase efficiency and reduce procurement time, the lead time, make procurement a much more streamlined activity rather than an ad hoc process. Reduce risk, improve quality, improve fairness and transparency as well. So that all your suppliers, they have a good amount of trust on you as an organization procuring medical products. And finally, deliver value for money. That is very important. Um, there are so many studies where it has been determined that different countries pay different kinds of prices for the same product. So say you are buying a product, say you are buying etinolol, okay? Um, and within Nigeria, say one state is buying etinolol from X manufacturer and the other state is buying etinolol from Y manufacturer. You will see that there are difference in prices, difference in quality, difference in shipping time and delivery times. So value for money means that you have the best possible quality, lowest possible cost, and a very streamlined lead time. So you will see that if we compare between states, some states are possibly getting some sort of value for money while others are not. So how do you create such a scenario where everyone gets that? And that's where strategic procurement comes into play. All right, let's move forward. So on this slide, you can see the difference between ad hoc procurement and strategic procurement. Shreya and anyone else, if my video or my audio freezes, please do let me know, because today I'm not in my original office location. Okay, so my internet connection can also vary. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Now on the screen, you can see the difference between ad hoc procurement and strategic procurement that I have been talking about. I will only read the side which is about strategic procurement. You can directly read the slides so that you know what is the opposite. So strategic procurement is a systematic and a planned approach. So it is not like it does not happen on the whims of one person. It is a team effort and it has to be planned properly. So if say your state or your program needs the products, say we are sitting in August, say the next cycle starts from September 2025. Okay, you need to start a strategic procurement now so that you receive your products then. If you think that, okay, September 25 is my next cycle, I will start in July. Well, that will not be strategic procurement. That will just be purchasing. Okay, so if you think that you are very strategic and you're starting in July, then you have to reflect. Strategic means you have to think long, okay, and have plan it with different all the various stakeholders involved in the process. It involves developing a comprehensive strategy, market analysis, supplier evaluation, and negotiation strategies as well. So all this, if you do, that would be termed as strategic procurement. It emphasizes building strategic partnerships with suppliers. Like I said, if you have good long-term partnerships with your suppliers, then they will also give you better quality products, lower priced products over a period of time, and also better lead times. So, and all that is part of relationship building, with which can only be a long-term process. You cannot achieve that if you just go to a supplier and tell them to supply something for once. So it has to be a long term effort. Like I said, again, it focuses on long term requirements rather than a shorter turnaround, and that's why it takes longer time to set up as well. So if you want to set up a strategic procurement system within your state or within your organization, you have to think a longer time frame. You cannot think that, okay, I want to do strategic procurement, but I want my supplies to come in 3 months' time. Well, that would not be strategic procurement. Okay, that is just purchasing. Okay, moving on. So now that we've understood that we need a longer time frame to set up strategic procurement and that it is highly, highly required. So how do we set it up? Now, these couple of slides will discuss how to set up strategic procurement. So there are 3 steps. First is analysis. Analysis of your demand, what products you need, how much you need, where do you need them, and what kind of budget do you have. You also need to know the environment, supply environment, who are the suppliers, who are possible suppliers, where are they located, do you have local representatives of those suppliers, are those products registered? So all these things, they are part of your environment and supplier markets, supplier environment. And then what could be some of the risks? No one thought about COVID before COVID, that okay, some kind of a pandemic would come. No one thought about it, and hence everything stopped. Now, since COVID has happened, wherever we talk about supply risks, any kind of an outbreak or pandemic is always written in the list. That, okay, something like that may happen. So we need to be ready for that. Okay, so all these things you need to analyze first. Now, once you analyze all that, then you need to make some sort of strategic choices. We will learn some strategic choices in the upcoming slides. So different alternatives, different choices are there within procurement. Okay, so those we will discuss. Now, once you've listed down your own choices, then you need to create a plan, a procurement plan. So that plan means your cyclical plan, from receiving a demand to creating a bid, having a supplier conference, for example, then receiving offers, then creating contracts, then issuing purchase orders, then freight forwarding systems, custom clearance, and then receiving the products. So that is an entire procurement plan. And all this is part of strategic procurement. And this is how you set up strategic procurement at any level, whether it is your organization, an organization that might be procuring, say an NGO. So you might be a faith-based NGO in Nigeria. You might be a large distributor in Nigeria, private sector. The process is still the same. Okay, you might be a wholesaler in Nigeria and you import. The process is still the same. And if you work at a state level, again, the same process. The process does not change. Now, this slide is an expansion of the previous one. So I showed you three steps. Now, three steps here, they are slightly more elaborated in this slide. So if you see, the first step, analysis, is broken down into 5 sub steps. Then your choices, and then your strategy and plan. Okay, so under choices, you see your own internal understanding, your core competencies, capacity, communication, stakeholder strategy, your borrowing capacity, inflations, currency exchange, uh, availability of foreign currency, available suppliers in the market, supplier positioning, supplier preferencing, giving preference to local suppliers, for example, then having sustainability goals, then managing risks. Then once you do all that, then you choose some options, strategic options. We will discuss that very shortly. And then finally, your plan on how to receive those products that you need, get those products in country that you need. Okay, so that is a full detailed overview of how to set up strategic procurement within your organization or your state. Okay, so what you have the slides with you, so please read them, and then try to reflect on what is happening in your respective states or your organizations, and whether what I'm telling you is happening in your state or your organization. If not, then you know what to do. Okay. I will stop here very briefly because I have given you a lot of information on what is strategic procurement, what are the components of strategic procurement, and how do you set up strategic procurement. So if you have any questions at this point or any comments at this point, please do not hesitate to ask them or say them. Yeah. Yes, please. Aminat, please go on.
Okay, good afternoon. My question is, what's the minimum time frame for strategic procurement? What's the minimum time to plan for strategic procurement?
Minimum time frame you can calculate by understanding, first of all, how much time does it take for your supplies to arrive in the country as soon as they're ready at the manufacturer side. So say if you are getting them by sea route, say from India, majority, it might take 3 months, it might take a bit less. That's number one. Then add how much time does it take to get all your procurement processes sorted. So from bidding, because you need a lot of signatures, you need a lot of approvals, someone has to approve the budget, then it has to be published, evaluated, all that, until the point that you issue a purchase order. It might be 3 to 6 months, by the way, if you're doing very large procurement. So say it's already 9 months. Then you can also add that, okay, you can also add some timeline for demand planning, which is your quantification step. Okay. So maybe another 3 months you can add for a detailed demand planning, for a long-term demand planning, say 2 to 3 years. So it's already about 1 year. And then you can add certain time for risks, managing risks. So risks, security and all that. So maybe another 3 to 6 months, depending on whether it is a high risk or a low risk or whatever. So anything between 1 to 1.5 years, I would say in most cases for a country like Nigeria, even if you are doing it at a state level, I would say minimum 1 year of a time horizon that you need to take into account. So, like I said, if you want to start your cycle in September 2025, you need to begin today. That's the minimum. But then again, in some cases, uh, some of your processes may take a lot of time. And the processes that take most amount of time, one is demand planning, two is budget allocation, because you need to have a budget in place, money in place before you start procurement. You should not start procurement without money in place. You should not be issuing contracts unless you know that your organization or your state have the money to pay. And that is one of the biggest mistakes that organizations do, because what happens is they set up the contracts believing that the budget will come. Then when the budget comes, it is probably lower than expected, and then the suppliers have already made commitments. Now they have started to ship you the products, and then you are delaying supplier payments because you're trying to get more money in. And that delay leads to very bad reputation and low confidence in suppliers for next cycle. So minimum 1 year. I would say if you are doing it for the first time, then take at least 1.5 years. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions on up to this point? Okay. Please, you can also type your questions on chat, and then I will try to answer them as well. Yeah, sorry, Bethel, please, you can ask your question.
Yeah, I think my question is a bit related to the early stages of procurement. Or okay, say you have analyzed the market, checked your sustainability procurement methods, and conducted your risk assessments. Then, what's the best way to search out for best suppliers to get across to in case of making supplies per se for products?
So if I understand a question correctly, you're asking the parameters to choose the right suppliers after you have received all the quotations and the information, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. So when we are talking about medical products procurement, first of all, the approach that needs to be used is called QCBS. I'm tapping it on chat as well. It's called QCBS. Does anyone know what is QCBS? Does anyone know what is QCBS? No? Anyone? Yes, Isaac.
Let me try. I've never heard of it. Maybe quality cost.
Yes, correct. Yes, your estimation is correct. So quality and cost-based selection. Okay. Now, generally what we do is when we are procuring in bulk, and this is what you are also studying in module number 5, you ideally should have a two-stage procurement. In QCBS, Isaac, if you can mute yourself, there is some noise coming. Thank you. In QCBS, you start with first assessing the quality of product. Now, quality of product is assessed by looking at what type of certifications that the supplier have for that particular product. So say some of the highest certifications that a product can get is having it pre-qualified by WHO, World Health Organization. Or if there is a manufacturer who supplies the same product in USA, United States of America, or to Japan or to Germany in Europe. So if the same product is supplied by this supplier in those stringent markets, right now they are called World World Health Organization listed authority category 4, WLA 4, or stringent regulatory authority, SRA. Okay. So if these suppliers supply these products that you want to these markets, Shreya, if you can mute yourself. Yeah, thank you. And the same supplier has put up a bid, to supply those products to you, exact same product coming from the exact same manufacturing facility. Then that means they would have a very good quality. Another way of assessing quality is to go there by yourself. Say NAFDAC will go there, and of course you will work with NAFDAC to send the GMP inspectors and do an inspection and also do a sample testing of their products. And if everything is good, then you can ascertain that okay, the quality is good. So once you assess their quality, then you ask them to put up their cost bids. So first assessing the quality makes you sure that okay, who are the suppliers who have the best quality that you need. And NAFDAC, for example, they have a criteria of quality. So if you go to NAFDAC, for example, all of you, and it's the same for everyone, huh? In Nigeria, all states must comply with NAFDAC specifications. I believe everyone knows what NAFDAC is. Is there anyone who does not know NAFDAC? Okay, I believe you all know NAFDAC, which is the Medicine Regulatory Authority of Nigeria. Okay, so NAFDAC has quality specifications. The same specifications you as procurer must give it to the suppliers. Okay, now once you are sure that those specifications are met, then you ask for your cost. And hence, out of all the suppliers who have the right quality, you can choose the supplier who has the lowest cost. And that's how you select the right supplier. And when you are procuring in bulk, massive quantities, don't select only one supplier. Choose at least two suppliers. Okay. In many organizations, for example, UNICEF, UNFPA, Chemonics, what they do is they give 70% of quantities to the supplier who has bid the lowest, and then keep the 30% for the second lowest supplier so that they can have a contractual relationship with both. So if supplier 1 does not is not able to supply in on certain occasion, they still have a contract with supplier number 2, and then they ask them to supply more so that you do not face any issues at a later stage. Does that answer your question, Bethel?
It makes a lot of sense. I think I wanted to go over the 70%, 30% ratio for UNICEF.
Okay. All right. So if you have any further questions, Bethel, do not hesitate to ask them on WhatsApp. I will be happy to respond to you as well. Okay. So moving on, Shreya, can you lower Bethel's hand? Thank you. Moving on. Yeah. So I said during this the previous stage that how do you set up strategic procurement, that one of the stages is identifying certain strategic options. Okay. Now, those strategic options can also be looked at from the point of view of best practices. So these are some of these options that you have. These are also the best practices. So for example, I'll give an example why I'm calling them options. So let's learn it from the perspective of best practices, and then I will explain why I'm calling them also strategic options. So number one, conducting market research to identify potential suppliers and understanding market trends. Now that is a strategic option as well, because you may choose not to conduct market research because you already have all the information. But if you don't have all the information, then you may want to conduct market research and identify potential suppliers. So that's an option, but these are the best practices. So if you're trying to set up strategic procurement, you must at least try to do these or choose between some of these, because you may not be able to do everything. Okay, so that is what I meant when I said choose your options. Now let's go to number two. Identify core competencies and strategic partnership needs, developing clear procurement policies and procedures. So you also need to define your procurement policy. Now, what do you mean by policy? Policy would mean, for example, how will you negotiate? Or how, like just like Bethel asked, you need to put it in the policy. How will you select supplier? That's a policy. You know, some organizations have a policy that they will undertake QCBS, supplier selection, while some organizations have a policy that they say that we will only look at lowest cost, L1. We don't care about quality. Well, they do, but they don't know how to, estimate the quality. So they only look at cost, lowest cost. That's a strategic option, but that needs to go into your procurement policy. How are you going to do that? You can also look at a policy indicator. For example, what kind of Incoterms are you going to use? Trade terms. Are you going to use FOB, or are you going to use DAP or CIF? What are you going to use? That is a policy. Okay, and that may depend sometimes on case to case. You also need to identify core competencies. For example, some organizations, they have a policy saying that for certain products, they will only procure it from manufacturers, direct manufacturers. While some products can be received from large wholesalers. They can be local wholesalers or international wholesalers or international distributors. That is also a policy. Okay, because some organization may not have the core competency to get everything procured directly from their own efforts. So instead of going supplier to supplier, choose a large wholesaler who has access to multiple suppliers at once. Okay, so that's also identifying your core competencies. Number three, establishing long-term relationships with suppliers and third parties. Now that's a best practice, but that's also a strategic option. You may say, okay, I don't want to establish long-term relationship. I will only establish 1 year relationship. That's it. But that is not the best practice. The best practice is to establish long-term relationship. Number four, confirming that procurement decisions are based on long-term value for money rather than only cost. So that's the best practice. Your options can be anything. Your option can be, okay, my procurement decisions are based on only lowest price at this point in time, or who can supply me faster today. I don't care about what is happening 3 years down the line. So that's your option, strategic option. But that may not be the correct one. Number five, monitoring supplier performances, building relationships. So best practice is that you need to monitor supplier performance so that you know how good or a bad a supplier is. You may choose not to do that, but then that's not the best practice. Number six, leveraging technology in a systemic and systematic approach to streamline procurement. A best practice is doing it through e-procurement. You may not do that because you may not have the system today, but this is the best practice. And we will learn about e-procurement shortly. Collaborating with other stakeholders such as donors and partners to share procurement resources and expertise. In this case, I will also say in case of Nigeria, collaborating with other states. I don't know if there is a pooled procurement system in Nigeria. We will learn pooled procurement in this session. But does anyone know if some of the states, they conduct procurement of their medicines together? They pool their resources, they pool their demand, and then they get a supplier to supply all of it to them. Does anyone know if there is pooled procurement in Nigeria between states? Anyone?
Well, hello?
Yes, Isaac.
I'm not aware of any pool procurement, but just like we have recently, some states have established a drug management agency for medical consumables.
But that
They
will be in your
only,
state, no?
yes, but they purchase for the whole state. But
Yes.
like two states coming together to procure for their states, I don't think they exist for now. It's only the federal government that buy commodities for both
Okay.
states, federal government and local government. Yes, that's what I'm aware of.
Okay. I see. Okay. I see Dr. Okafor has finally been able to join. Dr. Okafor, welcome. And please, you want to say something, please, by all means.
Yes, thank you very much. And good afternoon, the Nigeria cohort, and good afternoon, Sanjay, and the entire faculty. For pool procurement in Nigeria, what is happening recently is that the African Resource Center for Excellence in Supply Chain has brokered some public-private partnership with the state, between the state and the manufacturers. So they've also been coordinating the pool procurement in that regard, because some companies complain that they don't have enough order from some states, and that they can also reduce the price if the order is much. So that PPP that ARC is anchoring is also anchoring pool procurement. So in that regard, it's ARC that is brokering that pool procurement. It's not as if the states wanted to come together to do a pool procurement, but because of the PPP model that ARC is coordinating for them, somehow they're now doing pool procurement because the companies are also asking for it, so that they can have a larger volume of order to manufacture. So that is the level of pool procurement that is happening among the states for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Okafor. Yes, Ahmed, you have a comment or a question?
Yes, good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Doctor, for that contribution. So we hope states will comply so as procurement will be seamless and cost effective. Then I think recently with the coming up of Regional Development Commission, like we have the Northwest Development Commission consisting of 7 states, the North Central and the rest, the Northeast. So I think there have been some support and previously some procurement that they do on behalf of those states, which they share to those states, especially states in crisis. So actually, even though it's not large, but they do come together and do some kind of procurement, actually. And apart from government, which you already know, some partners, especially in humanitarian settings, they do carry out pool procurement with UNICEF and the rest, MSF and the rest. They come together with the support of Procurement or the rest, and that has been a practice for long. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And for that pool procurement, it's only the 11 states that are enrolled in that PPP that are also able to do the pool procurement. Though I know that more companies are enrolling, and more states are enrolling also. And those states those 11 states also, they also have DMA, that's the Drug and Medical Consumable Agency. So the pool procurement has not cut across the entire state now, unless those states are enrolled in the PPP that is being brokered by ARC. They will not be able to join the pool procurement. So the more states that join, the more pool procurement that we are going to have, and the more seamless procurement will become for the state ministries of health. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Okafor. Thank you, Ahmed. Yes, Bethel.
Yeah, I was trying to make a little contribution to what Dr. Kafo has said, because she's an expert in this field, actually in ARC. You know, the analysis made for these companies relative to what ARC is doing is really beautiful, and it's still on a national scale. So if we can, work along to see that, because I know that there are most products that are procured, from other countries like India, things like some of these vaccines too, most which are not produced in Nigeria. So this form of pool procurement will also be, very, very valuable for, on an international basis for products that are, imported into Nigeria. So I think it's something that might be really considered, except for just the national level, which ARC is doing. I think it's a call for action for Dr. Okafor to extend the, maybe a statement to ARC to have these level of procurement done nationally extended to international bodies too, so that we can reduce cost and maximize profit.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you very much. Thank you. I will take that to ARC. Thank you.
Indeed. No, that's a fair point, and I believe now all of you are thinking about it. And see, this is what is procurement from a strategic point of view. See, all the states in Nigeria, they probably have set up their DMAs and LMCUs, and some are more functional than the others. But I believe in the next 5 years, all the DMAs would be at a similar operational and a functional level, because the kind of setup is very similar for each state. There is support from the federal government through NPS, CMP, and other organizations such as RKSM, and there are multiple other organizations in the country who are moving towards that direction. So, from a logical standpoint and from a strategic standpoint, it makes a lot of sense that if not all states, maybe from a regional perspective, various states can come together and pool their demands, and there is some sort of a uh, like a public-private partnership where all the different suppliers are also part of a pool, and NAFDAC is also part of that arrangement, where first they can also identify and assess the quality of products, and then from that pool of suppliers, they can supply to all the different states who have come together and estimated their demands in a collective manner. So that way, what will happen eventually is that the states will get better prices. Better prices mean lower prices, because now the volume of products are higher because of pooling. They will get better quality, because NAFDAC is already looking at the quality of products, at a centralized way, in a centralized way. And they will also receive better service in terms of delivery lead times, in terms of communication with suppliers. So all those things becomes much more easier. But that means that these DMAs, which is nothing but most of you, eventually some of you or most of you will be there in those places, in DMAs or with suppliers, or in places which will influence these organizations. And it is your role to eventually go and influence the right decisions. And in this case, for Nigeria, it's a no-brainer. You know, if you ask any procurement or supply chain experts, they will tell you that why all the states of Nigeria, they are procuring separately. It makes no sense, because they're procuring from the same suppliers. It makes all the sense for them to pool and then procure at once rather than 30 times, for example. Okay. So moving on, these were the best practices. Now we will look at some of the best practices through some examples or more analysis. Now the first one, and Shreya, please, if you can lower the hands, it's kind of a distraction. Thank you. The first best practice is leveraging technology, and more importantly, e-procurement. Now, what is e-procurement? E-procurement is simply using an enterprise level system to manage all the processes, documentation requirement, and communication in a procurement process. So everything from your budgeting to demand analysis to bidding, contracting, purchase orders, trade, receiving, all that happens through a system, electronic system, so that you have full visibility of what is happening at what stage, who is involved, if there is any challenges or risks, and any kind of documentation that you may need. That is e-procurement. And one of the case studies that is on your screen is from Rwanda. So Rwanda was one of the very first countries in Africa to adopt e-procurement within their entire public procurement system, and not just in health, but any public procurement. they decided that they will do it through electronic system. So they started in 2012. It was a long journey. There were a lot of challenges because people did not want to change. They were very comfortable in doing manual procurement because then they could receive some offers under the table, if you know what I mean. And there were technical challenges because as you want to implement e-procurement, you need hardware systems, computers. You also need internet, because if you want to connect everything together, you need internet. And at that time, Rwanda did not have very good internet. You also need to have experts who know the system and can train people. That's also a challenge. And then there is issues about confidentiality and security of those systems. So there were challenges, but Rwanda have shown very strong political will and leadership from up top, from government to the people who are implementing these processes. There were a lot of partnership with the private sector. There was a lot of training, capacity building, education, awareness, and monitoring. It took a long time, but if you go to Rwanda today, they will show you how everything happens through electronic system. They do not use any paper, or and not just paper, they don't even use emails. So there is a system where suppliers can go create their profiles, and then the bid is published in the system itself. Suppliers will put the bid in that system, and then it will be evaluated through the system itself, and contracts will be issued through the system as well. No emails, no physical contact. Yes, supplier conferencing and calling and everything is there, but everything then comes through that system. So what happens is there is very high transparency. Suppliers know at all times what is happening. There is monitoring. So if you are a head of DMA, for example, you know what is happening in your state, what is happening with procurement, or if you're sitting at federal level at NPS CMP, you also know that, okay, what's happening in Lagos state, or what is happening in Kano state, or what is happening in River state, what is happening. You can see through a single system. Okay, so that is how leveraging technology can make your systems better, more transparent, and efficient. A key thing here is that if you're using electronic system, it makes things faster. Otherwise, you have to take a document from one office to the other office, get it stamped, get it signed, then someone reviews again. Sometimes documents gets lost. Those kind of things happen as well. So this makes it efficient, very transparent, tamper proof, and then the scope of corruption also becomes very low. Okay, it does not disappear, but the scope becomes very low. Okay, so that's why e-procurement is one of the best practices. Okay, yeah, so I talked about all this already. Yeah, the next best practice that I will talk about is about leasing. And this is very specific to medical equipment, and that too the large ones. So for example, your X-ray machines, your MRI machines, your dialysis setup, CT scan, larger equipment, which are very expensive. And now today there are even for other stuff, there are other equipment as well, very, very highly specialized equipment. So what happens is that some of these equipment are needed. So for example, even in Nigeria, cancer is rising. You all know a lot of cancer patients in Nigeria. So if you want to diagnose cancer, you need these equipment. Some of the equipments like CT scanning or MRI scanning, these equipments are needed. Or X-ray is a very basic instrument that you need, but X-rays are also very expensive. For example, you need to simple ultrasound machines can also be expensive in some places. Today we are also getting the portable ultrasound machines, but a standard ultrasound machine can also be expensive to an extent. So anything which is expensive has a longer life from an equipment point of view, because these systems have, say, 10 years life. So instead of buying them, an organization can lease it from the manufacturer. Okay, so leasing is a process where the manufacturer will come, install the equipment at your health facility or your clinic or wherever it is, hospital. You do not pay a large upfront sum of money to own that piece of equipment, but you pay the supplier on a monthly or a quarterly basis based on usage. There is a leasing term that is agreed. Say you say, okay, I will use this equipment for 3 years, and there is a payment term that is organized, and then you also discuss what happens after 3 years. Maybe after 3 years, based on the depreciated cost, you buy the piece of equipment, or you say based on whatever is the a leasing cycle, the company will take that piece of equipment and give you the new one, and then there will be another renegotiation of monthly or quarterly cost. Or you will say that, okay, I will only use it for 5 years, and after that I won't use it. Maybe I will take it from someone else. So these are different kinds of leasing agreements. And in a lot of situations, leasing can be much more beneficial than buying this large product, because leasing can come with offers like training, free training, uh, easier options to change parts, spare parts, easier access to getting some sort of reagents or kits which are required to run the machine, and easier access to maintenance, maintenance, insurance, etc., etc. Okay, so that's how in a lot of conditions leasing is a better alternative than buying. But if you want to use this option for any equipment, you must do a comparison. You must compare whether buying is more beneficial for you or leasing is more beneficial to you. And depending on that, you can take that option. There are some benefits and challenges to leasing. Like I said, benefits could be access to latest equipment, so you can keep on changing the equipment after a point in time. Better cash flow and conservation of capital. Rather than paying $1 million for an equipment, you can just pay $10,000 every quarter for usage. Reduced maintenance and repair costs. It will still be there, but as part of leasing agreement might be less than if you own the product. Provide contractual flexibility. You might be able to break the contract, return the equipment, and get in contact with someone else if the service that you get is poor. Technological advancements. That's how you get the latest technological products that are available in the market. And it helps you to manage your asset properly, because what happens on these big products is that if you own them, once their life is finished, they have to be disposed of as well. Now, if you know how to dispose of, then it's good, but most organizations don't know. And personally, I have seen old CT scans, old X-rays sitting in a warehouse or sitting on the corner of an hospital because they don't know how to dispose them off. They're just sitting there and they are not functional. They're taking space, you know. But if you, as part of leasing, the manufacturers will then just take it and dispose them off as per their own, conditions, and they can recover some parts from it as well, which they will use in the next one. So that there are some of the benefits of leasing, but there can be some challenges as well. For example, compatibility. Maybe you are using some equipment, and if you bring on another equipment, it might not be compatible. So you may have to always buy it. Some sort of regulatory issues. Maybe in a country for a certain product, regulation does not permit that you go for leasing. Okay. Maybe when you did your comparison, maybe maintenance and repairs are much cheaper when you buy the product, say in conditions where the product is manufactured locally. Okay. There can be some unfavorable financial issues, So for example, over a long period of time, you may compare that the money that you are paying for leasing is actually more than what you can spend in buying, because there are issues of depreciation and all that stuff as well. And then data security and privacy, because if you're leasing, the product is still owned by and the system, because there is always a system within the product of these large equipment. These are still owned by the manufacturer. So if you did not negotiate the right contract, some of your patient data may also go to them, which is not right. It should always stay with you. So all these are challenges, but you can, determine or go around these challenges to find a right leasing partner. Leasing today is very common in developed countries. If you go to US, Europe, or even in India, for example, a lot of sorry, Shreya, can you mute Isaac? Thank you. Even in India, a lot of hospitals, a lot of state governments in India, they have stopped buying large equipment. They give leasing contracts to manufacturers to set up the entire clinic. So they will want to set up a dialysis clinic, they need 50 dialysis machines. Instead of buying them, they will tell the manufacturer, you run this clinic, and they come to a favorable term where some money is put in by the government, some money is put in by the manufacturer, and the manufacturer takes part of the fee that they generate from the user as part of the leasing agreement. So all these things can be done. So quickly moving on, the other thing is pooled procurement. So we already discussed a lot about pooled procurements. I will not go into details because we need to do the exercise. But very quickly, there's a question, please. How do you know the proper way to dispose an equipment? Um, to dispose an equipment, there are two ways. One, it is always given in the manual provided by the manufacturer. So if you want to dispose it yourself, it's a very large manual, and disposal instructions are always given. If you own the product, the manufacturer will give you how to dispose it. Or the other way is, once you are nearing the end of the life cycle of the product, you can contact the manufacturer and they will tell you, and they can even arrange it for you. Of course, you will have to pay for it, but they can arrange it for you. Different equipment have different ways of disposing them off. So it's not like pharmaceutical products that if it is a tablet, you can do this. If it is this, then you can incinerate it, you can put it in a landfill, or you can crush it, you can make a powder, mix it with cement. That they are simple ones. These equipment, they're very complex machineries. They are made out of plastic, metals, minerals, whatnot. You cannot just simply dispose them off. There are very detailed instructions. So if you need to know them, there are a lot of them written on WHO's website as well. So if you type World Health Organization, say you want to know for X-ray machines. So write X-ray machine disposal methodologies. You will find it, but not for all products, huh? So the best way is to ask the manufacturer. But in most cases, the manufacturer will tell you that, okay, if you have our product, only then we will tell you. So they're also very smart. They will not give you all the time. Okay. So it's always best to ask the manufacturer from where you got the product. If you are trying to buy a product, always ask, put in the contract that the manufacturer has to give you disposal terms as well. Okay. So pool procurement. There can be various benefits of pool procurement, like we discussed: cost savings, better bargaining power, efficient use of resources, improved quality, reduced risks, and one that promotes collaboration. However, there could be some challenges too. Who can tell me what can be some of the challenges of pooled procurement? The one that think from a perspective of Nigeria as well. If some states come together and they intend to do pool procurement, or even the PPP mechanism that is almost starting now, what could be some of the challenges of uh, using such a process? Anyone? What could be some of the challenges of pooled procurement?
Yes,
Yes,
let me
Ahmed.
try. Okay.
Ahmed first. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, because individual states are used to smaller procurement, engaging in procurement, there might be logistic and supply chain issues like warehousing, distribution, and maybe also process of working together. Also, there might be some issues in collaborations and bureaucracies of states working together towards procurement. But my main point is issue of the handling the logistic, distribution, and storage. Thank you.
Okay. Handling of logistics distribution can be a major challenge. Yes. Hafsat has said there can be delays in general process. Isaac, you were going to say something. Please, you can go on.
If one partner delays, it will affect the whole process, which is similar to what the other person has
Yeah.
said.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. That's true. Anyone else? Any other challenges that you can think of? Okay, nothing else. So some of the, okay, there is one in chat. There can be demand variability. Yes, demand variability can be a challenge. So demand variability, Festus, would be a challenge in a case. Give an example. So say there are 4 entities in a pool procurement, and they started with a demand estimation, forecasting and quantification. They started with that step. So each entity, each partner, they created their own forecasting, and they said, okay, we need X. Everyone said, okay, we need X amount of products. And they created their entire consolidated demand sheet. And that consolidated demand sheet went to the suppliers and they started to supply. Now, 3 months into the process, one partners come and say, oh, but our calculations were wrong. Something happened. We need less. We don't need this much, or we need more. We don't need this much. So variability is a challenge, but the bigger challenge is lack of capability of creating better demands. Okay. And it has happened. I have seen this with my own eyes, and it has happened where the pool procurement entity. So any pool procurement, the way it works is, say there are 4 or 5 partners. When they come together, they appoint a secretariat. Now that secretariat is independent, okay, and they must do all the negotiations on the partners' behalf. That secretariat will have members from each of the partners, but they will consolidate everything and then they will negotiate and they will operationalize everything on the behalf of all the partners. So now, once someone comes and says that their calculations were wrong, then it puts an undue pressure on the secretariat to now renegotiate with the suppliers. And the suppliers may not budge because the suppliers have created their own cash flow system, their own analysis. Now, if you come and say 3 months down the line that, oh, we had told you we need 1 million, but no, we only need 50,000. So, there will be no contract negotiation at that time. So it's actually the bigger challenge is if your if the partners involved in pool procurement have low capability or capacity, that is the bigger challenge. From experience, the biggest challenge in pool procurement that I've seen is lack of coordination or communication. What happens is people come together, they fail to set up the secretariat. So everyone will still keep on communicating. It cannot work like that. There has to be a one communication piece or a mouthpiece or like a speaker who speaks on everyone's behalf. So if that is set up, then it becomes easier. But in a lot of time, organizations fail to recognize that point. Okay. So those are some of the challenges in pool procurement. So if when you go and you start setting these kind of systems up in your respective states, think of these challenges and reflect how to address them. Okay. So now we are at a stage where the first part of the session is ended. If there are any questions up to this point, please go ahead and ask them. The next part of today's session is the assignment. Okay, but before we begin, if you have any questions about what we have studied today, so we have studied today how to set up strategic procurement. Okay, for what is strategic procurement, how to set up strategic procurement, what are the best practices, which are also your strategic options. Then we also discuss some of the best practices. I mean, it's in this session, it's unfortunately, it's very difficult to discuss all of it because then it will be probably a 5-hour session. If I start explaining each and every best practice. So that's why we have picked up the best ones and the ones which are more appropriate than the others. Okay. So if you have any questions up to this point, please